About a year ago, I was putting my 7-year-old son to bed, which I pretty much do every night. And, he asks questions that you would think a 7-year-old would ask. He asks you those typical questions like, why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? So on and so forth. And that particular night, he said to me, Dad, how does the sun work? Like, is it on fire? And, when I started to explain to him how the sun worked, I said, no, it's not really on fire. It goes through this process called nuclear fusion, where gravity takes these lighter elements. And I could see he wasn't getting it. He just wasn't understanding what I was saying. So I pulled out my phone and I fired up ChatGPT and I said, hey, can you explain how the sun works to a 7-year-old? And I have to tell you, it was mind-blowing, the answer that it gave. It was perfect. It was very simple. It was very visually oriented. It used a lot of different analogies and it made total sense to him in a way I probably couldn't have ever done. And you could just see his eyes light up and his mind was blown, not because it just explained how the sun worked, but because he was seeing something for the very first time. And he said, Dad, what is this? And I said, well, it's AI, son. It's something very, very new and very powerful. Now, why am I telling you this story? Look, I work with companies who are using AI every day to transform their business, to transform their operations, to transform how they work. And it never ceases to amaze me how much this technology is in the process of changing how business is done on a daily basis. Oh, and by the way, my name's Alex, and I'm the Chief Innovation and AI Officer for a company called Netsurit. This story stuck with me, and I probably won't ever forget this story because I wouldn't have known, and I clearly didn't know, how to give an answer that he was going to understand. And it's not because I don't know how the sun works, but I wouldn't have thought to explain it that way. And when you see technology taking something very, very complex, simplifying it, and translating it into a language that a 7-year-old can understand, it was just a huge wow moment for me. Because it wasn't some big long-winded Google search or anything like that. It gave me exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it in that moment. And once I started using that and once I started noticing these things, I started to see it everywhere in how people learn, how they write, how they plan, how they make decisions. And people are interacting with this technology in a way that literally didn't exist a year or two ago. And look, if that's happening in everyday life, at home with a kid asking about how the sun works, it's definitely happening inside of businesses too. And that's the strange part. When this technology first comes out, it almost seems like magic. It almost seems like something that's impossible. But then you fast forward 6 months or a year, and it becomes very natural. It becomes something that feels standard. And that's usually what happens right before something stops being out there and starts becoming a necessity for businesses. Some teams and some businesses are already thinking about AI in that way, while others, well, they're pretty much treating it like a novelty. And that difference is really starting to show.